Books teach us, they inspire us, they challenge us, and they expand our horizons. Books contain the best thoughts of the greatest minds in history, but the problem is, there are millions to choose from. So what should you invest your time reading? What should you spend your money on? How do you sort through all the bullshit and find the good shit? You let the superior men do the work. Matt and Jay take the best books, pick the most important points, and distill them down to a concentrated 30-minute podcast. We help you find the books you need to read and why you need to read them. You may even learn something. So take out your coffee, tea, a glass of wine, or a good IPA. Sit back, relax, and enjoy. Welcome to the Superior Men Bookcast. Welcome to the Superior Men Bookcast. The book that we are covering for today is a book by Gary Taubes, published in 2007. Book is called Good Calories, Bad Calories. That's what everybody refers to it as, but then there's also a subtext. So good calories, bad calories, fats, carbs, and the controversial science of diet and health. So this is this one that Jay and I have bantered around just a little bit, and we'll talk to you guys as we go through this. This is quite a book, quite a read, so let's talk a little bit. What is this book about? So I say really the underlying theme of this whole book here is going to be good
eat whatever
science.
You want. That's
right.
Really that's really what it's saying.
Well, no, that's what we do already.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what we're doing now.
I was wrong.
So let's not do that.
The underlying theme: good science, bad science.
Yeah, because that's really what it is, and this is an outsider's look of diet and diet history. And if you want to know everything about why we have the food pyramid, why that exists, why are we told to do what we're told to do, this book really explains it. It is in as much a diet book as it is also a research as to nutrition policy and history, mainly in the United States, but it does talk a lot about other countries and how we've sort of come up with what we've come up with. So
absolutely, a big chunk of this book is really about how politics and as we say here, the public health authority, how people who are in charge of your particular area, wherever you live in the world, how they set policy about how you eat, and how various different farms and different companies create the food and market the food to the public.
And I've talked a lot about using some of your using your own brain to figure stuff out. Don't use some of these logical fallacies. And one of the ones that is used a lot in our public health policy, is going to be that confirmation bias. It's like, well, we've done this, so let's keep doing it, as opposed to saying what's really the thing. Because I think we can all look and go, hey, why Americans are getting fatter? Why are we getting fatter? And it's like, because we're not moving enough, or we're overeating and we need to starve ourselves. And it really talks about why is it? Why are we fatter? Like, let's actually look at it. And that's what this book does. We're really looking at. Taubes did about 5 years of research going to this book. And if you are a fan of research, you will love this. If you want citations, you want to look and go down the rabbit hole, you absolutely can do this.
Yeah. So there's over 100 pages of notes and bibliography in the book, and that is only a very small percentage of the book. So
right, exactly.
There's plenty to go. Having said that, this is not an easy read. Matt's putting the description here in our notes of would you say it's easy, average, or difficult? He decided the word he used was daunting, which I think is really a good word for it.
It's easy to read. It's great examples, good stories, but when you grab this book and you're like, this is 640 pages. I mean, there's quite a bit to it. The audiobook is over 25 hours long.
Yeah, 640 pages. You're going to be invested in this for a bit, and like you're saying, Matt, that's very conversational style. He doesn't talk down to you, and doesn't really have a strong bias, which is wonderful. It's so rare to see, but he's a scientific journalist prior to this book, so he comes in with kind of a more, let's see where we're at here. I'm not saying that this is good or that this is bad, and kind of the whole essence of the book, good calories, bad calories. What is one? We don't know. So throughout the process of the book, it's talking about that. How popular is this book? How well known is it? It's a big deal.
Yeah, so we get on Amazon, we have just shy of 1,000 reviews, and it's sitting at 4.5 stars. He has another. So this book was released, like I said, in 2007. In 2011, he sort of released I'll call it like a Reader's Digest version, if anybody even knows what that means anymore. It's sort of a summed up version of this book. And it's called Why We Get Fat and What to Do About It. So it has a lot of the same information in it, but it's in a less research-based format. So if you want to just get the meat of this, you could look at that book too. Why We Get Fat and What to Do About It. That was released at the end of 2011. Same information, pretty much, but less research based, so you don't get overwhelmed. Some people get very overwhelmed by that.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of material, a lot to absorb, a lot of history, a lot of politics, a lot of science, a lot of studies, many, hundreds and hundreds of studies that he references. So
yes.
That one can be a little bit easier to digest and swallow, to use some analogies from the food world there. It is a really big deal. It's one of the first books that really was willing to challenge and kind of started this thinking about maybe fat, which everyone knows is bad. Like, we all know that fat is bad. If you eat fat, you're going to get fat. Like, it's just so obvious. This book and his research really kind of digs into that and explodes that and shows it for what it is, which is really just a very logical, very, very kind of neat myth that doesn't actually, there's no science behind it.
Right, and that's the thing where it's just like, well, we all know that fat's bad. We all know that it's bad, right? It has to be, because that's just what's in our, in our food pyramid that most of us grew up with. At the top, it said fats and sweets. We just need a little bit of fat, a little bit of sweets. That's it. That's all we need. And it's like, well, it's not based on anything. It's based on more government policy and the various lobbies that exist than anything else. So, I found out about this book I was reading
how did you find out about this book? Is this Tortorich?
Yeah, Vinnie Tortorich referenced it, and I was like, what is that? And I looked at this book, and I was like, oh, okay, this is going to be an investment. And so went through it, and I know as I was reading through this, or I think I brought that up to you, Jay. Maybe I did it already.
You literally bought me a copy of the book.
Yeah,
you're like, look, here, read this, you fat ass. I was like, oh man, that's nice. Thank you very much for that. No, it's one of those books that you cannot come away with a different perspective. Like, no, it will change your mind whether you want it to or not. If you read through it, if you absorb the material, you can't ignore it, because there's just too much science.
Well, and that's exactly it. And he also he's not saying, look, this is the way it has to be. And his conclusions are, we need more research done on this. We need more studies that draw out on this, instead of some of the half-assed studies that are done on everything. Even if you look at these low-carb studies, they're still they're low as compared to the standard American diet. However, they're much higher than what should be done on this. So it's sort of like, well, I'll just sort of handicap myself, and I don't get the results that I'm looking for. So it's not true science that how a lot of these studies are done, and that's what he picks apart some of these studies and really talks about some of the issues with it. So let's get a little bit about Gary Taubes. So give me a little info, Jay.
Yeah, so he's a co-founder, senior scientific advisor of the Nutrition Science Initiative, which is a kind of a group that really focuses on trying to understand why the various foods that we eat affect us the way that they do. He's won a number of awards. As we're saying, he's the author of Why We Get Fat, What to Do About It, The Good Calories, Bad Calories, and Diet Delusion is his first kind of diet book. But he actually has 2 other books that most people don't know about. One of them called Nobel Dreams, Power, Deceit, and the Ultimate Experiment, about the kind of the background getting into some of that I believe about the hydrogen experience,
right?
And the hydrogen bomb, Bad Science, The Short Life and Weird Times of Cold Fusion in 1993. So he is not just a nutrition researcher. He's not just obsessed with food. Which makes him really interesting because I
actually like that.
Yeah,
I like that.
He can look at different things. His work has appeared New York Times Magazine, Atlantic, Esquire, and he's gotten 3 Science in Society Journalism Awards from the National Association of Science Writers. He's won a bunch of stuff. He's legit, but as you read through any of his books, I might recommend the Case Against Sugar. Just because for the average person, like if you're going to get straight to something that's going to change your life, that might be the most valuable thing that you could get.
Case Against Sugar is amazing.
Yeah, because that really, and it helps to expand and think about, okay, how do we look at everything that we eat? From, again, the perspective of science, not just like, why is food what it is, but in addition to that, the politics of it, why it's almost about like why we eat what we eat. Most of the time we just go down to whatever the local grocery store is, and whatever's there we eat that. Or when you see
stuff. Yeah, you see stuff and it goes, oh, this is healthy, this is heart healthy, these are healthy grains, these are healthy blah blah blah. And it's like, okay, well, you probably didn't pay attention in biology class, because this wouldn't be in nutrition class. In biology class, where they talk about how you metabolize the things that you eat. This is not new. This is not anything groundbreaking. There's what he talks about is a huge disconnect between the nutrition world and the science world, where we know what happens metabolically when we do things, when we ingest certain things. We know the pathways of digestion. When we talk about the different macros that we eat, that is nothing new. And that's really when we're talking about in the book, there's 3 main portions of this book. And again, we're not going to dive into everything about this book, but there's 3 main pieces where he talks about the fat cholesterol hypothesis. That's going to be the first part of the book. Then the carbohydrate hypothesis, and then obesity and the regulation of weight. So we really dive into why we do what we do. Like, why are we eating this way? What happens when we do things? And why is there a difference between what the dietitians and nutritionists, what they're taught versus what a biologist is taught when they talk about what happens when you ingest and the pathways that things take and how your hormones play a role of this. Why is there a disconnect? Why is there a breakdown in there? Because there is. There's
definitely a breakdown, and it has a lot to do with how people think about these things. It's this essence of, I believe that certain things are obvious about the body, and certain things are obvious about food. And so as a researcher, when I have that mentality, when I go in and go, I believe that fat is bad for you because it's obvious there's fat people out there, and fat is associated with all these various different conditions. So we know obviously that fat is going to be something that we need to try and remove. Well,
so since fat is bad, eating fat is bad.
Right. And it's just, you don't have to think about it. It's obvious and it's apparent. It's also wrong.
Exactly.
There's no science behind it. So if you have a big part of this book is him breaking down these kind of conceptions and misconceptions, and then the science behind that, absolutely fascinating.
All right, so let's get into this. Jay, what did you like best about the book?
I really liked best about this book as it made me feel good about eating bacon. That's probably my number one reason that I like this book. After reading this book, I can go and tell other people, you know what's good? Bacon. Cheese. Cheese also. Huge fan of cheese. Always have been. And the reason, and I'm not saying they go out, have a steady diet of bacon. I mean, sure, once or twice a day, fine, but not all of your meals bacon. The point is, though, fat is not bad for you. It's not in and of itself. Fat is not bad for you, and carbohydrates, for that matter, not bad for you. Protein, not bad for you. If you don't think about food as good or bad, you think of it as having specific functions under certain circumstances, then you can start analyzing, okay, what is in the food that I'm eating? Why am I eating it? What's the purpose for eating it? And then I can go, okay, so if I know everything that's in this, how are these things affecting me? And that's where most people get in trouble, especially with carbohydrates, because most people have no idea how much refining is going on with the carbohydrates and the sugars that they're eating and what that's doing to their body.
Right. No, it's great. And it's such a powerful thing with that book. Great idea there. So give me a quote. Give me a quote or two. What do you like? What stands out? I
have one quote that I really enjoy, and there's a lot of really great stuff. He's a really interesting author as a pure writer. He loves stories. He loves kind of describing people and their interactions, and he characterizes all these people, especially Ansel Keys is probably one of the most. You just love to hate this guy. He's a very important researcher and policymaker working at the highest levels of government back in the 70s.
That nobody knows.
Nobody knows about, except now. Anybody that knows kind of this field, and anybody that's kind of studied keto. But anyway, I love this quote. I thought this kind of was a big essence of the entire book. He says, "Wishful science eventually devolves to the point where it is kept alive simply by the natural reluctance of its advocates to recognize or acknowledge error, rather than compelling evidence that it's right." This is the stance of the church with Galileo. The sun is at the center of the universe. No, it's not, because Earth is the most important.
And I can see everything is going around us at the Earth,
and
so
we're here. So we're the most important. We're obviously the most important people. Science, going all the way back to the beginning of science, is all about this question of I believe that such and such a thing is the way that it is. Everyone knows that it is this way, and now you're telling me that it's not. Obviously, you're the problem, not the science. The science has nothing to do with this. You're just wrong, because everyone knows that, that the Earth is flat. That's just the way it is. You sail out too far, you fall off the edge. So that one, that's that whole essence was a big deal for me.
All right, so tell me also, what did you learn from the book, and how did it change you, or did it change you?
It definitely changed me. It helped me to start eating so much more healthfully all the way around, and also not to be afraid of food. I was raised, like you and like most of us, that fat's not good for you. You don't want fat. Fat's bad. And so if you stayed away from fat, there were two real macros and then a bad, evil macro. And this is it's so important. Fat is really a big deal for your entire diet. A big part of your body runs on fat. As you start studying into it, you realize, oh, hey, the brain is mostly fat. Our nervous system runs on fat. Our hormones run on fat. Our body's electrical system requires fat to function. You can't be happy unless you have a regular balance of fat in your diet. And just those things are mind-blowing to me. They still are fascinating and shocking to me.
Yep. So what'd you like? What's a critique? What you like least?
Well, this is an easy one, but damn, this book is long and big and thick and overwhelming. I also would say that it rambles a bit. Like, I kind of feel like, and this is probably the fact that I'm spend too much time blogging and trying to bullet point everything out, but I feel like he could have consolidated and still had plenty of material. And so it just kind of like, it didn't have a flow. It didn't pull me through. And I think that's it. Even long books, I have a tendency to really enjoy digging into long books. But I'll be honest, this is by far at 580 some odd pages before we even get to the notes and bibliography. It was a little bit much for me from that perspective.
Okay. All right. And real quick, what would you ask the author?
I would ask him how much sugar and fat he eats.
Like how his diet changed, right?
Yeah. I want to see, like, right now. Do you eat sugar at all? Refined carbs? But give me your diet for the last month. I want to know everything that you've eaten.
Yep. No, and I know we kind of talked about any related books.
I would say related books. Obviously, his other two books, especially that one. The Case Against Sugar. I think everyone should check that out. I feel like go on the internet and look up keto. Go look up just the concept of eating all three of your macros. I think that's just start reading material on that subject because all three are super important.
Yep.
Matt, I think it's your turn, man. I want to know. I'm really fascinated. I wish we had more time to ask you about this because this is your baby. You introduced me. What did you like best about this book?
What I liked about it is that it's basically just like, hey, you know how gravity pulls you down? Yeah, well, it doesn't. It pushes you up, and like that's about the shift that it took for me. I know it's nice to say we talk about a paradigm shift. This book was a paradigm shift for me, 100 times over. So when I started reading this book, so shortly before I started reading this book, I had been a vegetarian my whole life, and I had sort of questioned why I was a vegetarian and switched over to eating meat and incorporating meat into my diet. And
that's a huge change. Wow.
It was big, and I noticed some significant changes overall in my health and appearance, and at the time I had some blood work and whatever, so a lot of changes. And then so reading this book was just sort of like, wow, like why are we lied to? Why are we lied to?
My whole life is a lie.
I know everything I know. That's pretty much what this one was. So, totally changed my perspective. Absolutely.
And for a lot of people, I think are in that same boat. But that's awesome. So, give me a quote or two that really stood out to you in this one.
So what I love, because this was sort of my thinking too, is I'm gonna have a quote, but it's a quote from somebody else, because he has great quotes in here. And this was actually from an anthropologist, from Melvin Connor. So the quote is, there's only one way to lose weight, and that is to grow accustomed to feeling hungry. The simple fact, known to most people in affluent countries, seems somehow lost on the authors of the diet, weight loss, and exercise books that find their lucrative way through the drugstore book racks. Two questions then. Why do they fail to mention it? And why is it so? So what I love is just like, it's the question. And I think to me, this grabs why he did this book. Why is this thing so? Because, again, we all know, I'm air quotes, we all know that in order to lose weight, you need to basically restrict all your calories and calories in, calories out. I need to just put less in my body and work out more, and I'm going to lose weight. The problem is that shit doesn't work. It doesn't. Because guess what? Your body's not a fire. Your body is a very complicated machine that uses a lot of hormones. It's sort of like, well, I'll throw less gas into my car engine, and then now it won't. Now it won't run as well. Well, what if you have a smart engine that shuts down its cylinders? Okay, well, it shut down 3 of its cylinders, so therefore it's still going. That's what our body does. We down regulate, so it's great. It just encompasses to me like why this is important.
The true complexity of the body.
Right.
Yeah. So, and kind of connected that, what did you learn from this book, or how did it change you and connect it?
Yeah, no, there's so much. Because really, it's like you learn, wait, fat isn't bad. If I eat fat, doesn't throw it, it's not like I become fat because I eat fat. You become fat because you eat carbohydrates. That's it. That is how your body puts weight on. If you did not eat carbohydrates, you would not put weight on. So there's a whole hormone response that goes into it. So that's sort of what I learned from this book, and it completely changed me by like, oh wait, healthy heart healthy grains, maybe not heart healthy. So, and yeah, so that's what I learned.
Okay, that's like the top of the many things that you learned.
Yeah, I know, right?
What do you like least?
So,
and you can't use mine. You can't just say it's too long.
Well, so the thing is that there is a lot to it. So there's 540 pages to go through it. It's and then notes. So total it's 836 pages, including bibliography and notes. So near 1,000 pages. I just think that my critique is that it's that most people aren't going to do it. Most people aren't going to read it. You know what people want? Hey, according to a new study, if you eat your cigarettes instead of smoking them, you'll lose weight or something. It's like, and that's what people want. Oh, a headline, and then move from there. So that would be my critique. It's too much. It's too much for most people, which is why I would then probably push them towards his other book, the Why We Get Fat and What to Do About It.
The shorter version. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. What would you ask him if you could sit down?
I'd want to know why he did it, like where he came to, why he started, what his question was before to get into this book. That would be my thing. So.
Well, for that's a 5-year-long study. You gotta be thinking he's motivated internally by something.
Exactly, and I'm just curious what his motivation was to get going there. So,
okay, yeah. No, that'd be fascinating to know. So connected books, we've already talked about his other 2 books. Any other books that you might recommend?
Another one, if you really want to, is connected onto this would be Fitness Confidential by Vinnie Tortorich. Fantastic book. You like stories and stuff? That's really what his book is, and it's great. A lot of the same information, but in a story and anecdotal by one person, but still same kind of information. So, any final thoughts on this, Jay? Anything else you have to add here at the end?
I think that the really big one is to say, whether or not you read Good Calories, Bad Calories, or whether you skip to the kind of faster version, Why We're Fat, What to Do About It, or even if you go a little bit sideways and go on and listen to the Case Against Sugar, you really need to absorb this. Everybody needs to absorb this material because it'll change the way that you think about food. What about you, Matt? Final thoughts?
Yeah. Nope, that's my thing. You need to take a look, even if you're like, you know what, I'm a vegan and this is just the way that it is and it's healthy and this is the way that I'm going to do it. Great, that's fine. Read this. Just challenge yourself a little bit. Read one of these books. The Case Against Sugar, even if you're a vegan, that's great. But read one of these books, take a look at it. You need to.
It's amazing. Well, hey, thank you so much, Matt, and thank you guys for listening to the show. The book, once again, Good Calories, Bad Calories by Gary Taubes. Read it, check it out. We guarantee you will never be the same. Thanks for listening. We'll see you again soon.
A reader lives 1,000 lives before he dies. The man who never reads lives only one. Thank you for listening to the Superior Men Bookcast. Share it with a friend. You heard our thoughts. Go read it for yourself.